The reading I'd like to share with you this morning comes from the poet Jalal al-Din Rumi, who lived and wrote in the large part of the 13th century. This is entitled, "What Was Told, That." What was said to the rose that made it open was said to me here in my chest. What was told to the cypress that made it strong and straight, what was whispered to the jasmine, so it is what it is, whatever, made sugar cane sweet. Whatever was said to the inhabitants of the town of Chigil in Turkestan that makes them so handsome. Whatever lets the pomegranate flower blush like a human face, that is being said to me now. I blush. Whatever put eloquence in language, that's happening here. The great warehouse doors open, I fill with gratitude, chewing a piece of sugar cane, in love with the one to whom every that belongs. A few days ago, I was watching some of the news coverage on one of the more progressive television news networks, and I heard Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry answering questions. Now, in my opinion, he's someone whose voice was truly inspiring to me through the entire ordeal that the area of the Twin Cities and the state was put through. On that day, the so-called border czar had announced that what is ridiculously called Operation Metro Surge, in other words, the invasion of 3,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents into the Twin Cities, was going to end. Now that, except, he said, for some security details, and of course the devil is always in the details, and it's not clear that any of these individuals have actually left, but as has been said many times, there are 800 flights in and out of Minneapolis every day, so, maybe some of them are on their way. Mayor Frey spoke about the strength and the courage of the people of his city and of the region. And he said this, and he really emphasized, they deserve all the credit. Trump and his people thought they could come in and we would roll over or we would riot in order to serve the interests of the administration, but we did not. We did not, he said, roll over like so many corporate and university leaders have done. We stood strong. We did not cave to an invasion by the troops of our own country. And then he said, and it wasn't just resistance, it was bigger than that. He said, it was love. And honestly, hearing him say that really touched my heart, because it is love. It is more than resistance. It is something more powerful. You and I watched, for those of us who watched these events unfold on television with video after video of these things happening in real time, we watched love unfold in the last several weeks. Thousands and thousands of people motivated by love. Love for their neighbors, love for freedom, love for themselves, love for their city, for their state, for their country. Protesting, making meals, buying food, looking out for their neighbors, witnessing. There are not many times when I, give thanks to whoever is in charge of these things for cell phones, but I did give thanks. I did give thanks, because without the courage and the presence of people witnessing, we would be left with a tissue of dangerous lies. Thousands and thousands of people coming out in very cold weather, day after day, witnessing and protesting the presence of armed thugs. And I'll talk more about them in a minute. There with a mandate to intimidate and carry out a quota of 3,000 arrests a day. A surge we paid for and continue to pay for. Do I love the people of Minnesota? I do. Do I love the ICE agents and the Border Patrol agents who are carrying out these horrific orders? Yes, I do. And I lament, truly, the moral injury and the degradation which these individuals have signed up for. Because there is a great deal of research that shows that even those of us who fight in what we call just wars suffer moral injuries that change our lives forever. Many of you here this morning and within the sound of my voice are doing the exact same things as was raised by somebody just a few minutes ago, as the people of Minneapolis, putting your bodies, your hands, your hearts, your cooking skills, your shopping skills, your resources in service of our siblings who are so desperately in need of help. Driving people to appointments when knowing that the day might end with an airplane trip to a concentration camp. Love. This is the love that our faith calls us to. This is the love we learn about together when we gather in communities like this one around the world. Now, you and I know, and I'm a big fan of Valentine's Day, but you and I know that love has been monetized to within an inch of its life in our culture. I was curious about this, so I actually did some research and learned that this Valentine's Day holiday of 2026 is projected to bring in more than 29 billion with a B dollars. $29 billion this year alone. So I decided to do what they call back of the napkin math, and I thought, okay, I looked up how much money the United States recorded music industry makes in any given year, and it's roughly 17.7 B with a billion dollars. Well, let's say 50% of that is love songs. I'd say it's probably more like 99.9, but let's say 50% of that. That brings us to $30 billion a year as a total Valentine's Day profit. I'm not going to detail the adult products and services that are part of our monetized love economy, but let's just note that rough estimates tell us these industries earn another $20 billion with a B dollars a year. If I add that up, that's $50 billion. The majority of the countries in this world, roughly 150 of the countries in this world, have a budget that is smaller than that. And so I invite us to think about, just for a moment, what our nation could do with those $50 billion that is not being done. Restoring health care, mental health care, benefits to the people who most need them, And the kicker to all of this is, when I think about it, the kicker to all of this is that none of these products and messages and wonderful colored papers and glitter, oh my God, I love glitter. I really do. It's my son calls it the herpes of the craft world, and so it is, but I love it. I love it anyway. It's like Cheerios, you can't get rid of it. None of these things propel us or call us to the kind of love for our neighbor that our world needs. The kind of love that leads us to peace and holding one another in compassion and strength and courage. None of these messages call us or invite us or teach us to treat our neighbor the way we would want to be treated ourselves. And none of them teach us to work against an authoritarian, fascist government that truly, truly wants many of us dead or enslaved. I don't use those words lightly. But if Spanish is our native language, we belong in a concentration camp. If we cry for justice or love of our neighbors, we are the enemy. What kind of world is it where it has become a crime to love our neighbor? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, in his book, The Strength to Love, says this, and I quote, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." In the first book of Corinthians, an extended letter written to the early Christians, the early Jesus movement at the church in Corinth, Greece, the author we know was the Apostle Paul, says this, "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing." I want us not only to go to the far past and the more recent past, but I want to remind us of the antecedents in our own faith tradition. I want to take us back to the early 17th century, when roughly 1630 or so, 30 families living in Sudbury, Massachusetts, Dedham, Massachusetts, decided they wanted to build a church in their town. They understood themselves to be refugees from an oppressive regime in England, and they wanted to really figure out together what this church would be like. And so they held cottage meetings for an entire year, rotating from house to house, and they talked not about hellfire and damnation and the things that Puritans in our minds often are most preoccupied with. Instead, they talked about how they would be together, and they talked about the love they wanted to center. Communities drawn together by covenant and love, not their beliefs. Love would always be the most important thing they discovered. They agreed on in this year of meetings democratic principles instead of a hierarchy or autocracy. That would be their governing model, and it is ours. They would codify it later, the churches of New England, in the Cambridge Platform of 1648. I want us to remember, because while many of the things we still do may seem antiquated, putting love at the center is not one of them. It doesn't matter that our culture teaches us that love is a commodity. We know who we are if we learn from who we have been for so many hundreds of years. My dear friends, this kind of love is revolutionary, especially in these days. This kind of love takes courage. It takes curiosity. It takes, as the passage from the Christian Testament tells us, the knowledge and the courage to look inside ourselves. What is motivating me here? Why do I want to do what I do? And as we do that examination, honestly, is it guilt or is it love? We can all help each other with this, beloveds. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.